We're seeing a generalized deterioration of the situation, of course, in the Middle East and North Africa as regards migrants, and this deriving from events in those areas, most notably Syria, Iraq, and Libya. Now, one of the big challenges as we see the apparent resultant migratory movement favoring, if that could be the word, Europe, one of the problems we face is one of definition. Who are the people who are actually going from those farther reaches into, for example, Turkey, or if you're looking at North Africa, into Italy and Greece? This gets you into an issue that is more than academic, that is key in policy making, especially as regards our national security situation. Refugees are those who are generally understood to have a well-founded fear of persecution, which fear prevents them from returning to their homelands. And in general, if you qualify as a refugee, if you've made a refugee claimant application, then you are entitled to a variety of advantages, including, of course, the ability to reside in a country that would not otherwise be one upon which you'd have any kind of claim. And so this has raised all kinds of debates. And in the most recent dramatic movement that we've seen of people alleged to have come from Syria, Iraq, to have wound up in Turkey, and then to have moved on, often across dangerous waterways, to Greece, for example, you have the question, to what extent would they have been entitled to have, in fact, moved on from Turkey? Because Turkey, one would have thought, would have qualified as a safe haven. Once a refugee, a bona fide refugee, reaches safe haven, that in general ends any debate about whether there would be an entitlement for those people to continue on to other jurisdictions. And some of those other jurisdictions, as we've heard in recent debate, might offer more advantageous social welfare and other benefits, raising a whole separate series of questions about appropriateness of some of the population movement. Above and beyond that are questions about whether indeed some of the people arriving, whether in Turkey or elsewhere, would qualify as refugees according to that generally recognized international definition. Might they instead be migrants, non-refugee migrants, and specifically economic migrants, which again raises a whole raft of further questions. In a sense, economic migrants who wouldn't qualify as refugees are nothing less than illegal immigrants, if seen in that light. Well, we have to remember that Canada has been an enormous immigration accepting country in recent years, and not necessarily in the country's own interest. We're now approaching an almost staggering 300,000 immigrants per year. This is, in per capita terms, well over double what the United States accepts. I think it outstrips the G20 countries and probably virtually all other countries in the world, especially if you take into account the additional so-called temporary visa holders who could number well over another 200,000 people. So you're talking over 500,000 individuals for a country of roughly 35 million. One might well have asked oneself, going back some years, how on earth Canadian government authorities could hope seriously to screen in security terms that number of people. This is an astonishing thing. It's reflected also in the size of the Muslim Canadian population, which is a fascinating study in itself, having increased from about 98,000 people in 1981 through to 500,000 in 2005, now well over 1 million and increasing rapidly. This, of course, would be merely an academic point of interest were it not for the fact that, as so many of our genuinely moderate Muslim colleagues have pointed out, there is a struggle for what they describe as the soul of Islam internationally, and there is always a serious risk that, as we've already seen, Canada could be caught up very seriously in the implications of that, some of them extremely violent, especially in a world where weapons of mass destruction and relevant material can be proliferating.